make it about health science students inspiring other health science students. And in keeping with the university's mission in mind, we brought TED Talks to the University of New Mexico. This journey started last March with a handful of us doing auditions, countless edits later, countless rehearsals later, even some voice coaching by Jessica herself. So we are very excited to have you all here. We also wanted to mention that the HSC is having the Interprofessional Education Day tomorrow, so I wanted to also welcome you to that at UNM. And with no further ado, I'd like to bring Jessica up.
Thank you all so much for coming. This is hopefully the beginning of many Med Talks. It's been such a wonderful journey working with all these 5 speakers. Each of them has truly inspired me. And every time I listen to their talks, I hear something new and thought-provoking. With that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Katherine Caldwell is a very busy third-year medical student, and yet she has taken the time to help out all of us second years and to participate in something like this, showing that her true passion is in her compassion. And as I think you will find from her speech, she has the strength of mind and talent to back that up. Please give a warm welcome to Katherine.
John is a complicated patient. He's maybe even what you might call an internal medicine nightmare. He's been admitted to the hospital for acute kidney injury and hyperkalemia, or high potassium, that puts him at risk of having a cardiac arrest. There's not much to do for him medically. Stabilize him, wait for his electrolytes to normalize, see if his kidneys heal themselves. But if that's true, if we're just practicing Voltaire's version of medicine, where you wait around for nature to heal the patient, why did I just say that John is complicated? John is complicated because of the social factors surrounding his case. It's because he's HIV positive. At the age of 30, he's been confined to bed secondary to a stroke. It's because John's mother, his only caregiver, speaks exclusively Spanish. It's because we don't know if there's enough money for him to get his expensive G-tube feeds. We don't know if he missed his last HIV clinic appointment because there was no one to drive him. John is complicated because his needs lie outside the realm of what we do as doctors. I go see John first thing early in the morning, and his mother speaks softly to me in Spanish, and I ask her how she thinks he's doing. Mejor, she says. Better. And then she asks me a question you get really good at dodging as a third-year medical student. ¿Cuándo pudimos regresar a la casa? When can we go home? I give her an answer that, God, I seem to be using a lot at this point in my career. Yo no sé. I don't know. Pero puedo hablar con la doctora? But I can talk to the doctor? Not helpful. But the problem is that the doctors think he's doing pretty good. His electrolytes have normalized, his EKG looks great. And as far as we can tell, his kidneys have turned around. So, why am I still feeling like we haven't fixed the problem? Why was there no one to help his mother when his G-tube fell out at home? Why was there no one to get them to the ER faster? And who do I ask for help? How do you bring together doctors and nurses and home health aides and transportation services for patients like John. And in all of that, what is my role as a future doctor? I'd like to step away from the bedside, just for a moment, if you'll allow me. I don't know the first time I got introduced to the idea that doctors do it alone. I don't know if that was an idea born out of the isolation of my pre-med education, where the people on either side of you would never help you out in case you blew the curve, in case you took their spot come application season. But I do know it is something I have seen modeled again and again in doctors I've worked with, in classmates, and even in myself. And I'd like to tell you about one time that attitude was made very clear to me. During my undergraduate education, I was working in a NICU, or a neonatal intensive care unit, where my job was as a parent resource volunteer. I helped parents find their babies and try and navigate the ever-shifting landscape of medical equipment. I worked almost exclusively with nurses, seeing the doctors only when they rounded through first thing in the morning, nor later when they came back to do procedures on these babies. Many of them no larger than my hands. One morning while I was working there, one of the nurses, let's call her Leah, approached one of the doctors to tell him that one of the babies they had been planning a procedure on was doing better. This doctor, I've always assumed that he was a resident because it seemed like he was living at the hospital. He was always there when I was there. He looked pretty chronically sleep deprived. As she approached him to tell him this, I was standing close enough to do exactly what your mother always tells you not to do: eavesdrop. So I know that she wasn't instructing him, wasn't telling him, just asking, just wondering, just trying to participate in the care of her patient. And he snapped, shut her down so fast that I felt the sting on the back of my neck. "The doctors are dealing with it," he said. The doctors. When had medicine become something that only doctors had input for? Why was patient care some sort of golf club? Members only, doctors only. Now, this isn't a problem that begins on the floor. We do not create this attitude of doctors only in the hospital. So much like everything in medicine, we have to go back further to understand. We cannot look at a patient in liver failure, look at a single snapshot, their labs from yesterday, and understand the cause. Instead, we must go back weeks or months or years to when that patient contracted hepatitis and began drinking. So here we must look at the education. We talk about the hidden curriculum in medical school all of the time. We talk about how students learn cynicism from their burned out residents, how we lose our empathy swallowed up in a system where we spend more time in front of a computer than with a human being. But what no one seems to be talking about is how the curriculum teaches isolation instead of collaboration. How we fail to teach our future doctors how to turn to someone else and say, "Hey, can you help me out with this?" Or better, how to turn to someone else and say, "Hey, how can I help you?" Here at UNM, we probably do a better job than most. Medical students spend a lot of their time in PBL or problem-based learning, teaching students that the correct way to solve clinical problems is with the help of the physicians on either side of them. We've certainly made the first move, to teach our students that their common students are comrades and not enemies. And that is just the beginning. Because starting third year and walking onto the wards, I realized that patient care, well, patient care is a little bit like a war. And just like any war, it takes a well-trained fighting force to win. It takes doctors and nurses and PTs and OTs and respiratory therapists and pharmacists and social workers and about 18 other people just for the care of one patient. And as was best said by everyone's favorite MASH TV doctor, Dr. Hawkeye Pierce, a war is like when it rains in New York City and everyone gathers into doorways, perfect strangers. We all start getting chummy together. A medical team is just like that. Perfect strangers who get to know one another because they're working together for the same goal, to achieve the best outcome for a patient. So why not include that in medical education? Why not introduce our future doctors to their partners early on, so they might not one day be that doctor in the NICU telling someone else that the doctors are dealing with it. Here at UNM, we've started to teach students how to create physician-to-physician networks. So why not take that one step further? Open the doors and include everyone else. Because the truth is, there are things outside our scope of practice. There are things we don't know how to handle. And there are things someone else may better know how to treat. Now, I've given you the diagnosis, but what's the cure? It certainly isn't, well, something like this. One person standing in front of a large group of others talking about the importance of interdisciplinary practice does not interdisciplinary practice create. Although, I am very glad that you're all here listening to me tonight. Instead, we must train our future health professionals early on in real-world, hands-on ways in order to eliminate the isolationist, doctors-only mentality and create a culture of collaboration. As I mentioned before, at medical school, we spend a lot of time in PBI, problem-based learning, or small group sessions. But too often, I've found that we get to the end of one of these sessions, we've cured the patient, we've done our jobs, and a tutor looks at us and says, all right, what's your dispo plan? How do we send this patient home? And a room full of bright, enthusiastic young medical students, all of whom had input for every question asked over the last 3 hours, suddenly falls silent. Anyone know anything about home health care, skilled nursing facilities? Anyone? Anyone? So why not open the doors to those sessions and put medical students in the same room with nursing students and pharmacy students and social work students, so that each group may not only feel out the limit of their own expertise, but also discover where someone else's expertise lies. Secondly, I would like to propose that we could teach this sort of collaboration through a service for learning model. What do I mean by that? At UNM, all medical students receive certification in public health, meaning that we go out into the communities that we will one day hopefully serve and try to see what problems we can solve outside the four walls of the hospital. So sometimes this means we teach CPR. Sometimes we partner with local schools to teach childhood nutrition. Sometimes we give free eye exams. But too often, I have found that the scope of these projects is extremely limited by the small number of hands available to do the work. Why not include other pre-health students in these projects? By moving out of the classroom and into the real world, we teach our future healthcare professionals the power of using many hands to create light work. Here, the focus becomes role clarification. It is important in education that we not only educate people how to best do their own jobs, but also how to ask for help. In changing the HIM curriculum to not be one of isolation and instead to be one of collaboration, we create a future generation of healthcare professionals ready to meet the increasing complexities of patient care in the modern world. We step back up to the bedside. But this time we're not alone. This time, I've brought Tim with me. Tim is my soft-spoken, efficient nurse case manager on my internal medicine team. Because sometimes, my role as a future doctor is just knowing how to ask for help. And so Tim helps John and his mother find access to home health care. He helps them get transportation so they can go home. Cuando pudimos regresar a la casa? Ahora. Now. Now we fixed the problem. Now we found a solution. When we allow the isolationist doctors-only mentality to continue, we do a disservice to patients like John, whose real problems can't be fixed by a medication or procedure, but who might be helped by the dozens of hands ready, willing, and able. If only we knew how to ask for help. So why don't we take some advice from Hawkeye? Because it's raining here in New York City, and we're all standing in the same doorway. Why don't we start shaking hands, learning how to fight a better fight? Thank you.